Before dawn on April 7, 1862, the combined armies of Major Generals Ulysses S. Grant and Don Carlos Buell began to edge slowly forward from Pittsburgh Landing in a massive counterattack. Major General Lew Wallace's 3rd Division of the Army of the Tennessee, on Grant's extreme right flank and overlooking the broad valley of Tillman Branch, leads off the combat with an artillery duel with Captain William H. Ketchum's Alabama Battery, part of Ruggles' 1st Division and Bragg's 2nd Corps, posted in a portion of McClernand's camp in North Jones Field across the ravine. Positioned to Lew Wallace's left are the remnants of Sherman's 5th Division, then McClernand's 1st, along with the remainder of W. H. L. Wallace's 2nd Division, now under Colonel James Tuttle, and Stephen Hurlbut's 4th Division, stretching into line eastward toward the landing. Deployed forward of Grant's left are Buell's troops from the Army of the Ohio, the 4th Division of Brigadier General William Bull Nelson on the left, Brigadier General Thomas L. Crittenden's 5th Division in the center, and Brigadier General Alexander M. McCook's 2nd Division on the right. First moving Bull Nelson's troops across Dill Branch, Major General Buell finishes his initial battle deployments by advancing Crittenden and McCook inland on the Corinth Road, with his left flank anchored on the river. Buell's front extends westward for over a mile, where his right flank forms astride the Hamburg, Savannah, and Corinth Road Junction, 1 mile southwest of Pittsburgh Landing. In all, Grant has over 45,000 men in line. Nearly half of them are in fresh units. The Confederates are so badly intermingled that little corps, division, or even in some cases brigade organization and cohesion exist. It takes 2 hours for aides first to locate and then mobilize General Polk and his command, which had unfortunately retired the previous night to a point well south of the rest of the army, 4 miles inland from the river. Therefore, as Beauregard hastily sets about locating and then deploying his scattered troops, only General Breckinridge would manage to form all 3 brigades of his corps side by side in line of battle. Meanwhile, Generals Hardee, Bragg, and Polk each again lead groups of commingled commands on different sectors of the broad 3-mile front. By 10 a.m., General Beauregard has established a stable front, which runs across the field from southeast to northwest, about 1.5 miles inland from the river. Hardee, with his forces formed along the Hamburg-Purdy Road, directs operations on the right, where he meets Buell's advance on the river road. On Hardee's left comes Breckinridge, where the southern front angles northward from the eastern Corinth and Hamburg-Purdy Road Junction. Breckinridge's corps holds the Confederate center along the Old Hornets' Nest front. Further north, Bragg assumes command of the far left flank, anchoring the southern front on the bluffs overlooking Owl Creek. Once General Polk returns to the field from the rear, he assumes command of the left center, between Breckinridge and Bragg. On his left front, Beauregard manages to deploy some 28,000 men. The sheer power of the Federal thrust jolts the unsuspecting Southerners. A member of the Crescent, Louisiana Regiment of New Orleans later noted, "They appeared to me like ants in their nest, for the more we fired upon them, the more they swarmed about. One would have said that they sprouted from the ground like mushrooms." For the first time, Mississippi Private A.H. Mecklin recorded in his diary, "I began to have doubts as to the issues of this contest. I knew that the enemy were reinforced and stoutly," observed Private Thomas C. Robertson of the 4th Louisiana. "At daybreak, our pickets came rushing in under a murderous fire, and the first thing we knew, we were almost surrounded by 6 or 7 regiments of Yankees." Bull Nelson's division leads the advance on the Federal left, south along the Hamburg-Savannah Road. no serious opposition is encountered until his troops arrive at the Widow Wicker's Field after 8 a.m. Suddenly, Colonel William B. Hazen's 19th Brigade is fired on by General Chalmers' troops, who were moved up from their bivouac in Colonel Stewart's captured camps. Chalmers, joined by several other Southern detachments, blocks Nelson's further advance along the road. Heavy skirmishing continues for the next hour and a half as both sides await reinforcements. Crittenden's and McCook's divisions, which moved southwest and west into the Hornet's Nest thicket astride the eastern Corinth and Corinth roads, follow Nelson's advance. By 10 a.m., troops from both divisions are heavily engaged. Lew Wallace's division on the right had opened the day's fighting by sparring with Colonel Preston Pond's brigade in Jones Field. Pond is soon ordered to move his men to the opposite flank in the fight against Buell. This movement allows Wallace to advance his division across Tillman Branch into the north end of Jones Field. In front of Wallace, Sam Wood's and Randall Gibson's Confederate brigades are hurriedly thrown forward to contest further Union advance south through Jones Field. As on the Federal left, the Union advance here stalls. Wallace is forced to wait out Grant's promised support from Sherman and McClernand on his left, as those troops had not yet advanced over Tillman Branch. About 9 to 9:30, General Ruggles branchly orders both Wood and Gibson to counterattack Wallace's division. The rebels are driven back by the fire of Morgan L. Smith's and John M. Thayer's brigades, along with 5 guns of Thurber's Battery I, 1st Missouri Light Artillery, which supports Wallace's hold on Jones Field. Buell, meanwhile, begins to make headway on the left. After 10 a.m., his divisions advance to the Sarabelle Peach Orchard, the site of such heavy fighting the previous day. Here, they encounter a reinforced Confederate line under Hardee along the Hamburg-Purdy Road. Colonel Sanders L. Bruce's 22nd Brigade of Nelson's division attacks south across the Sarabelle Field, but is driven back by musketry and a heavy right flank enfilade crossfire from Hodgson's 5th Company, Washington, Louisiana Artillery, and McClung's Tennessee Battery, both positioned to the west and Daniel Davis's wheat field. General Hardee orders a counterattack, which is spearheaded by Bowen's brigade in Breckinridge's corps, now commanded by Colonel John S. Martin. However, they in turn are swept back to the Hamburg-Purdy Road by the advance of Colonel Hazen's brigade. Hazen's Indiana and Ohio troops, joined by Colonel William Sooy Smith's 14th Brigade of Crittenden's division on the right, surges southwest into Davis's wheat field, where they overrun part of Captain Hodgson's Washington artillery. The Crescent Louisiana Regiment, along with the 19th Louisiana, rushes forward to assist the hard-pressed cannoneers. In a frantic melee of hand-to-hand fighting, the Louisianans retake the battery. With heavy Confederate pressure on both flanks, Nelson's entire division is forced to retire to Wicker Field and regroup. Breckinridge's men have held firm on Hardee's left. Therefore, Crittenden, like Nelson, is forced to retire Smith's brigade back into the Hornet's Nest thicket, where he busies himself reforming his lines within the thicket. As midday approaches, the fighting along the Confederate right seesaws back and forth. Before noon, General Crittenden again attacks Breckinridge's front, as his left presses down the eastern Corinth Road. Crittenden's right, along with McCook's division to the right, advances west across Duncan Field. This drive captures Southern cannon and breaks the back of Breckinridge's resistance at Duncan Field. Having lost a large number of men, Breckinridge's corps retires from the fighting toward the southwest. From noon until 2 p.m., the Northerners gain the upper hand astride the eastern Corinth Road, where Crittenden, reinforced by detachments from Grant's army, advances south to the junction with the Hamburg-Purdy Road. Meanwhile, General McCook presses west along the Corinth Road toward Water Oaks Pond and Wolf Field. On Buell's left, Nelson has also been reinforced with small detachments from Grant's army. Once again, Nelson's division enters Cerebel's field and attacks south toward the junction of the Hamburg-Savannah and Hamburg-Purdy roads. By 2 p.m., Nelson's men had pushed Hardee's front southward into Prentiss's camp and seized the Hamburg-Purdy road. This time, Nelson's men are here to stay. Since mid-morning, fierce fighting has raged on the Union right, where Confederate forces under Bragg and Polk fight unsuccessfully to halt the advance of Sherman, McClernand, and Hurlbut across Tillman Branch. By 11 a.m., the Southern left was retiring south from Jones Field under the mounting pressure from Grant's army. From his headquarters at Shiloh Church, Beauregard works frantically to form a new line north of Water Oaks Pond. Beginning at noon, some of the heaviest fighting of the day occurs in this sector. With Hardee starting to give way on the right, most of the Southern resistance is located west of the Eastern Corinth Road, in a line extending west along the Hamburg-Purdy Road to Owl Creek. Just after noon, Brigadier General Lovell Rousseau's brigade, joined by the brigades of Colonel Edward Kirk and William Gibson, all from McCook's division, attack westward through Wolf Field, astride the Corinth Road. Meanwhile, further west, Lew Wallace and Sherman continue to apply pressure on the southern left flank. As the Federals sweep forward through the center of McClernand's recaptured camps, Beauregard commits his remaining reserve, Preston Pond's brigade. Pond arrives at Shiloh Church with only 2 regiments, but several other disorganized detachments are pieced together to form a conglomerate attack force. Colonel Robert Russell stated that the assault was led by General Beauregard, who bore the colors in front of the line under the fire of the enemy. Several times during the day, Beauregard exposes himself to great harm by leading units into battle. Scolded by his aides, who argue that he is unnecessarily endangering himself, the army commander bluntly fires back. The order must now be follow, not go. Unfortunately, Colonel Jacob Thompson of General Beauregard's staff noted, "The fire and animation had left our troops. Many Southern soldiers are disconsolate and refuse to respond to further pleadings by their officers." Beauregard observes the change in morale, and as the bitter contest wears on, he increasingly attempts to rally his soldiers in person. A last-ditch Confederate counterattack proves momentarily successful. Southerners surge back across Water Oaks Pond and enter the southern portion of McClernand's camp, forcing McCook's men to give ground. Riding up to Colonel James Veitch's brigade of General Hurlbut's division, which stands in support of McCook, General Grant personally orders Veitch forward to stabilize the faltering Union front. Moving steadily forward, Veitch's men advance across Review Field past McCook's left and strike the Confederate right flank. Caught within the Federal vise, Colonel Russell remembered that despite the courage displayed by Beauregard, human endurance could stand no longer against such odds, and our forces were compelled to fall back to the church. It was now evident to a troubled Beauregard that the Federals had received heavy reinforcements, and his exhausted Confederates would be unable to prevail. Colonel Thomas Jordan inquires of the general, "Would it not be judicious to get away with what we have?" The Louisiana general replies, "I intend to withdraw in a few moments." About 3 p.m. on the ridge across the valley of Shiloh Branch, south of Shiloh Church, a Confederate rearguard of some 5,000 men from Breckinridge's corps, mixed detachments, and about a dozen guns is formed. This line holds the Federals at bay on the Corinth Road until 5 p.m., while the Southerners conduct an orderly withdrawal. At 5 p.m. on April 7, 1862, the bloody 2-day Battle of Shiloh, or Battle of Pittsburgh Landing, finally comes to its end with the retreat of the final Confederate regiments from the battlefield. Grant and Buell have successfully recaptured all the ground lost the previous day, thus concluding the bloody engagement in a decisive victory for the Union. The Battle of Shiloh is a major turning point in this early phase of the American Civil War. The body count proves to both North and South just what the cost of total war will be, and also demonstrates the changes in tactics and strategy with the advent of industrial warfare. Another smaller skirmish erupts the following day, April 8th, between elements of Major General Sherman's 5th Division conducting a reconnaissance in force against Colonel Nathan Bedford Forrest's cavalry detachment at Fallen Timbers. Grant had sent Sherman south down the Corinth Road to confirm whether the Army of Mississippi was in fact retreating or rallying for another day of fighting. 6 miles south of Pittsburgh Landing, Sherman's men are defeated in a brief, sharp skirmish with Forrest's charging cavalrymen. However, this clash is but a rearguard action by Forrest protecting the retreat of the Army of Mississippi back towards Corinth. Butcher's Bill at Shiloh sends shockwaves through the divided nation. The casualties are staggering. The Union has lost 13,047 men, including 1,754 killed, 8,408 wounded, and 2,885 captured or missing. The Confederates have lost 10,699 men, including 1,728 killed, 8,012 wounded, and 959 captured or missing. It is the bloodiest battle of both the Civil War and American history up to this point. In fact, more casualties have been sustained at Shiloh than the total losses of the Revolutionary War, War of 1812, and Mexican-American War combined. In the North, newspapers and the press are quick to focus the blame of the battle on Major General Ulysses S. Grant, the man who, just 2 months prior, had been praised as a hero for his victories at Forts Henry and Donelson. Many credit General Buell with taking control of the broken Union forces and leading them to victory on April 7th. Calls for General Grant's removal from command overwhelmed the White House. In response, President Lincoln replies with one of his famous quotes regarding Grant: "I can't spare this man, he fights." In the South, the Battle of Shiloh proves to be a devastating loss and a complete disaster for Confederate fortunes in the Western Theater. The Army of Mississippi retreats back to Corinth, Mississippi, where in the coming weeks it will be besieged by the combined armies of Grant, Buell, and Pope, under overall command of General Halleck. General Albert Sidney Johnston's death at Shiloh will prove in hindsight to be another great loss to the Confederate war effort in the West, believed at the time to be the South's greatest general. His loss will deprive the Confederates of a competent and capable commanding general to lead the Western Theater's armies. Indeed, Johnston may have well been the closest thing to a Robert E. Lee in the West, and his loss will pave the way for further Confederate disasters in the Western Theater in both campaigns and leadership. The Battle of Shiloh is a watermark moment in the early Civil War. Although the battles of Manassas awakened the American people to the realities of a long war, the Battle of Shiloh truly opens their eyes to the horrors of modern industrial war. Many believed before the Battle of Shiloh that the beginning of the end was at hand. However, the Battle of Shiloh would prove to be just the end of the beginning of a long and terrible war.